Hi guys, Ronnie here and welcome to the workshop. Today I'm going to talk about another pair of my head wheels. Now, a couple of months ago I brought you basically a long-term review of my Vanquish 6 pair that I use predominantly on my road bike. And there have been a couple of questions regarding the deeper section wheels that I use on my time trial bike. So today I'm going to talk about those. So first I will sum up the things that I like about the Vanquish 6s. So the main point for me with these wheels is the fact that they're extremely stable in the wind, and I've said this a couple of times already, but it's just true. It's probably the most stable wheel of this depth that I've ever used, and I have used many. And why is that a great thing? Well, the simple fact is that you never need to use anything shallower. I had also own the Vanquish 4s, but I just sold them because it was pointless, you know, because those 150 grams will not really save you anything apart from very steep hill climbs, but everywhere else the 6s are going to be faster, and because of the stability you can just use them all around. I've used them in ridiculous winds throughout the winter and they held up. In fact, they held up with their bearings and everything untouched through a whole winter of riding, which was a first for me. I had them also on my winter bike, and I've been using them ever since for racing with a bit of service. Now, I had various hub and free hub issues with Rowells, with MVs, and, well, Rowells mainly, fulcrums, etc. And also a couple of problems with carbon TI hubs. Even Chris King is not perfect in this area as much as they'd like to think. And the heads, they've just been bulletproof. And I've also said this a couple of times, but I think the reason for that is that they don't try to go super lightweight with the hubs. They use large 6902 bearings. So just to illustrate, this is the size of the bearing that most wheel brands use, 6802 or 6803, something similar. This is what HED use, so as you can see the difference is quite big. You get bigger balls, deeper races, much more durability, much tougher. And every single bearing, all 6 of them are the same size, so that makes for super easy servicing and keeping spares. They don't use any kind of fancy magnetic low drag free hub arrangement, which, yeah, it's not the most high-tech, but it just works. They use standard poles in their free hubs, pretty normal stuff, but as I said, it just works. It's also sealed with this O-ring around it, which I remove for my time trial wheels for even less drag. And actually on the rear wheel, both sides of the hub are sealed by this seal ring, which I also remove for my race wheels. But even like that, it survived through the winter, so it just works. The spokes they use are Sapim CX Rays, and they just work. They're the best spokes probably out there. And one thing which might not be completely oriented for durability is the use of aluminum nipples, or at least from what I can see they're aluminum, but I'm not exactly sure, and I haven't found the information on their website. But I didn't have any issues with that whatsoever. Another distinctive feature of the head rims themselves is the fact that they're very, very wide. They've been wide before it was cool, really, because they kind of set this trend in motion, and their current wheels are no exception, so they're 21mm internal. It's a design that's already I think 3 years old, so there are wider internal rims out there, but they still count on the wide side. One thing you need to keep in mind is that each depth uses its own profile, and this makes the width different as well. So the shallowest 40 is actually also the narrowest. Then we go for the 60, which sits in between, obviously, and the 80 is the deepest and the widest, also the heaviest and most aerodynamic of the lot. So this is a brief overview of the features. Now let's have a look at the wheels I have here. Okay, so this is the Vanquish Rcd Pro front wheel, so the top of the line. There's also the performance line, which uses a lower grade hub and carbon in the rim, but the dimensions, everything else is exactly the same and comes in at a lower price point. Me, as a sponsored rider by HED, I use the Pro version. Luckily they supply me with the good stuff. So this is what we have. What I'm going to show is actually a brand new pair that I have never used yet. I have set these aside for, you guessed it, my upcoming Factor TT bike when it eventually arrives. And as you can see, they're basically race ready with the rotor and the tire on there. So this is the front wheel, the widest of the lot, 80 mm deep, 31 mm external, which makes for a pretty good match with this new Conti tubeless time trial tire, which comes up to 27 mm. I've just measured it, so perfect width for the 31 mm internal, or sorry, external width of the rim. What I will experiment with is the use of silicone to fill out the gap between the tire and the rim. Now this is still a hooked rim, so there is a gap. On this rim you can probably see why brands are starting to experiment with hookless, because it has potential to create a better seam with the tire, but these, at least by looking at them, look great. One thing I also would like to point out about the HED wheels is the fact that they're, again, unlike their competitors, which are quite problematic to be honest, they're very easy to set up tubeless. So firstly, that's because they have a very well thought out inner rim shape, so it's not too pronounced, so the tape can actually stick to it very nicely. Secondly, they use very good quality tape. The downside is that you have to actually tape the rims yourself, but it brings user error into the equation, which I think also hurts them when something goes wrong. Never mind that, rant over. Let's just check another cool thing about HED wheels, and that's the tubeless valve that they supply. Now, I've only started using these wheels as tubeless this year. So last year I was using predominantly latex tubes with clincher tires. I went back to tubeless this year. And what I was really pleasantly surprised is that, again, unlike other brands, MV, they supply valves that actually work very, very well with the rims. And they actually seal on the first try, and they did on all of the wheels that I got. So that's a very good thing and saves a lot of headaches. These wheels actually are and have been set up for a while now with the tires. They haven't been ridden and there's no sealant in them, and they still hold full pressure for a couple of days. Obviously that's also down to the tire, but if the rim and valve interface wouldn't work very well, that would just not happen. So I'm pretty happy about that as well. So a couple more details about this particular wheel. You can also notice that I do have the MT900 140mm Shimano rotor on there already. I use 140 rotors all around because I'm light and I like to be aero, so smaller rotor is going to be more aero. And then also I have this little carbon cover to clean up the airflow around it, which is a bit of a marginal gain. I'm still missing the watch shop valve cover because I only have the ones for tubed valves or tube valves. These obviously with tubeless you have the locking nut on there, so it doesn't work, so I have to source that one too. As for the tires, if you check the latest rolling resistance data, these aren't actually the outright fastest in rolling resistance terms, but they're certainly up there with the Corsa Speeds, the Veloflux records, the Michelins. But the reason why I have a lot of hope in them, I've yet to test this, but my hypothesis is that because, well, Conti is known for their tread pattern, which is supposed to be very, very aerodynamically efficient, and combine that with the almost glass-leading rolling resistance, I think it should be a killer combo, particularly at higher speeds. Also the rim width, or sorry, the tire width is just perfect for these rims. So should be a fast setup, but yet to test that. If it doesn't work out, I still have the Michelin Power TTs or the Veloflex records to fall back into, although I really prefer the Michelins now because the Veloflexes are just a bit too narrow for these rims. So that was the 80. I haven't actually used the 80 rear at the back yet, but for next year I'm getting a pair of those just to try them in a road bike for flatter races, or at least that's the plan. Regarding the stability, on the time trial bike you do have a bit more weight on the front of the bike, so that kind of negates the use of a deeper wheel a little bit. Depends on the position, of course. The more aggressive you are, the more weight you have on the front, the more stability you have. Also, the lower the stack, the more stable you are, because the center of gravity is lower. But I found these to handle extremely well in pretty extreme winds, and again, like the 60 on the road bike, the 80 on the time trial bike, same thing applies. I haven't ever used the 60 in the time trial bike because I just haven't felt the need at any point to do so, and that's just a testament on how good the design on these rims is. Honestly, I'm kind of secretly hoping a little bit that HED would make an even deeper wheel. I think that would be a seriously fast piece of kit, because I forgot to mention this, but with these wheels I actually achieved my fastest or lowest ever CDA with my setup that I had last year with the HED TT. This year with the Cervelo didn't work out that well, but yeah, good kit all around. And then of course finally we have the disc wheel. So this is the Vanquish Rcd Pro. There's only the Pro version from the disc, unsurprisingly, no budget option. This is actually a spoked wheel with a bonded cover on it, and it uses a very pronounced lenticular shape, as you can probably see. Even on camera it's quite pronounced. The rim itself is actually very close to what you get on a Vanquish 6, and the whole shape is derived from that. Actually on this new wheel the cover is made of a slightly different carbon weave, which I think it looks cooler than what I had before. Anyway, I do like it. So with the disc wheel, really it's at the back, it doesn't really affect stability that much, or well, it actually improves it, unlike popular belief, so really happy with that. Again, has been sturdy, reliable, same hub mechanism like on the other wheels, and really can't just fault it. Also, on many covered disc wheels, and even on the solid ones, the outer layer can be quite delicate. For example, when I had the Roval disc, that has a very thin outer carbon layer with a foam structure that supports it, and it's really delicate. You know, if you press it a bit, you leave a permanent indentation in there. With these, the cover is pretty thick, and actually it doesn't really make that much noise when you're riding it because it's pretty stiff on the cover itself, but it's very sturdy compared to other options. Okay, so I think that sums it up briefly for a bit of an overview of these wheels and my experiences with them. If you want to know more about other products that I use for my training and racing, or if you'd like to see a similar overview of the new HED Emporia gravel wheels that I've been riding this year, then don't forget to tune into the channel later on and subscribe. Thanks for watching and see you next time.